Chapter 6, Intellectual Property, is divided into 6 sections, covering an overview of intellectual property in the U.S., copyrights, patents, trade secrets, trademarks, and global issues. We begin with an overview. The learning outcomes include: summarize intellectual property protections in the U.S., illustrate intellectual property in organizations, explore piracy and evaluate its impact on technology-related firms, identify countries with a high probability for piracy, evaluate the impact that piracy may have on an organization which owns technology intellectual property. This slide shows how we are faced with ethical dilemmas when we try to decide if we want to share files, consider downloading files, movies, songs, and whether our activities are legal or illegal. Sometimes it's simply not easy to tell, and we have to do the best we can to follow all laws while exhibiting professional ethics. The cartoon again illustrates how it's hard sometimes to determine how much is too much to copy. As it says, good artists copy. Copying with attribution is acceptable as long as it's for fair use, is licensed for reuse, and you provide a link to the file's location. The cartoon then says that great artists steal. If you steal intellectual property and are never caught, then nobody cares. If, however, you steal without permission and without attribution, the penalty can be quite harsh. Finally, the cartoon says, for everyone else, there's copyright. Guess what? We are all everyone else. We face ethical challenges when dealing with another's tangible or non-tangible intellectual property, but we give credit to the original author. In fact, we err on the side of too much attribution rather than too little. Let's now define intellectual property, or IP as I may refer to it throughout the class. Intellectual property refers to works of the mind that are created by a person, group, and/or organization. They are distinct from other products or services that already exist. IP is how ideas are expressed or information is put together. The ideas themselves cannot be protected. You cannot protect your idea for an office productivity suite like Microsoft Office, but they can protect how those ideas are expressed and put together. Then other companies such as Google and Apple are free to develop their own expressions of office productivity software. The idea of a productivity suite of software could not be protected, but the manner of expressing the ideas is protected. We will look more at relevant cases as we move along in this chapter. Intellectual property protection options include copyright, patent, trade secrets, trademark, and likely most important for software products, click-wrap agreements or contracts where the user agrees not to modify or tamper with the code and agrees to follow licensing agreements completely and fully. Owners may seek IP rights for names, written works, recorded media, inventions, etc., as long as the legal requirements are met. The owner of the property, which may be tangible, e.g. a car or a cell phone or a chair, or intangible, such as services, performances, etc., has certain rights associated with the IP. She or he receives compensation for others who use the IP. Compensation may include licensing fees, outright purchase of an item, rental of a product or service, or monthly payment for streaming rights. Compensation and rights to use the IP are left to the owner's discretion. The owners may decide not to use the IP, and that is a valid choice, even if the IP could be helpful to society. The owner may decide the product is too expensive to make without sufficient return, and that's the owner's right. Whatever they decide, it's their property. In general, the courts have ruled that the law should protect intellectual works in the same manner as physical property. U.S. courts have not reached consensus on the issue, however, as we will show in examples we discuss later, and this is subject to some controversy and discussion. Let's move on to a few examples of intellectual property in the business world. Novel production techniques may qualify for intellectual property protection. Maybe your company develops a new way to insert a part into a car. If it's novel and non-obvious, you may be able to get IP protection in the form of a patent. New methods of management may qualify as well, although this area is a little murkier. Meeting standards or achieving certain quality certifications may qualify for protection. These techniques are more intangible and must be justified when seeking protection. Developing unique product features, like adding a fingerprint sign-in option for a cell phone, for instance, may qualify for IP protection, as may a stylish brand image. The image must be distinct enough for your product to be quickly identified by a customer. If it's generic or if the image is already protected, you may have to make changes or decide not to seek IP protection. When determining the value of IP, courts typically look at how novel or different implementation of ideas leads to something valued by a customer or a particular customer, or something that a competitor would like to have. When dealing with intellectual or intangible assets, the value is very difficult to determine when protections are initially requested. Overall, the government's role is to balance the benefits of greater competition to us, the public, in terms of better products at lower cost, with the benefits of IP protection, in terms of companies being willing to invest a whole lot of money up front in research, development, and testing to be willing to embark on risky expenditures. While Hatch-Waxman was passed to try to control the rising cost of prescription meds, the concept of achieving balance with IT laws is consistent across tangible and intangible IT in other disciplines, such as IT or technology. What are some particularly worrisome intellectual property protection problems? One is piracy. If you look at the online piracy in numbers graphic at the website shown in the slide, you can scroll through and learn a lot about how IP is not being protected. Also, take a look at the YouTube video on why there's no stopping illegal downloading to get additional information on the scope of the problem and the difficulty in getting people to stop pirating technology. Why do we care if people copy? Hopefully, you've just seen video and graphic proof that internet piracy is an issue and takes money or goodwill away from the lawful owner of the intellectual property. Of course, as consumers, we have the probability of getting counterfeit goods. They may be lower quality and detract from the image of the original brand. Those who sell pirated goods or services are taking money away from the lawful holder of the intellectual property. Even if it's a small amount, the owner is entitled to every bit of profit from the protected property. Take, for instance, when you buy a Gucci purse on the streets of New York City. It's $40 and sold by a sidewalk vendor. Should you buy it? Not if it's stolen. A real Gucci with a high likelihood of being stolen and not purchased. You also shouldn't buy it if you believe it's a counterfeit. If you want a Gucci purse, pay the price required. If you know goods are stolen or counterfeit, you may be penalized as well as the person who sold it to you. In reality, we know that we are unlikely to get caught, however. This graphic from 2012 shows the top estimated illegal downloaders around the world. The U.S. has the largest number of downloads at over 96 million, with over twice as many as the second country, the UK, which has 43 million. Notice that many of the top illegal downloaders are in North America, Western Europe, and Australia. Part of that figure could be that countries listed have significantly greater access to the internet than developing countries. To summarize, intellectual property protections apply to how an idea is expressed, but not the idea itself. IP protections apply to tangible and intangible assets. U.S. courts have interpreted IT protections in a somewhat inconsistent manner. Technology IT protections have been notably inconsistent and have changed over time. There have been a large number of high-priority cases dealing with technology giants Samsung and Apple, along with other major players like Google and Microsoft. The problem of piracy isn't going away. Technology providers must remain vigilant to protect their intellectual property.